best friend of 20 years, poisoned my husband with antifreeze at our wedding reception because she thought he was stealing me from her. After only 2 weeks in jail, she moved in across the street and convinced everyone I was the crazy one until the wedding. Videos proved she'd been planning it for months. For as long as I could remember, my best friend Jenna has struggled with being an only child. Her parents worked double shifts at the hospital, and she spent most nights eating cereal alone in their trailer home. Some days she'd cry so hard she threw up, but the day we became friends in kindergarten, everything changed. She grabbed my hand during recess and declared, "We're going to be best friends forever." Everyone thought we were adorable. I did too. Fast forward 20 years later, and just last week she threw me a surprise engagement party. She showed up wearing a custom t-shirt with my face on it and best friend since 1999, written in pink glitter. My mom pulled me aside and said, "Thank goodness you have Jenna. Friends like that don't come around often." I laughed and hugged Jenna extra tight that night. She whispered, "Nothing's going to change between us, right? Promise me, Sarah." I promised. Looking back, that was the calm before the storm. It all started when Marcus took me to a new sushi place downtown, because 20 minutes after we arrived, Jenna showed up in a little black dress. She spent 10 minutes at the bar alone before her date canceled, and she joined our table. You see, I had been getting AirTag detected moving with you notifications for the last 3 weeks, but the whole time I thought it was a glitch. She must have slipped it in during her goodbye hug at the engagement party. When I confronted her, she just laughed. "It's for safety. What if something happens and Marcus doesn't tell me where you are?" She had this manic look in her eyes, one she only got when her BPD was acting up. So I waited until a few days later to draw the line in the sand, not IRL, but through FaceTime. "I love you, but I need you to respect my time with Marcus." She nodded and apologized, and we both said "I love you." I thought that was that. I was fast asleep at 2 a.m. that night when my phone rang. It was Jenna. She could barely get the words out between her sobs. "I'm sorry I know what you said, but I can't breathe. I think I'm dying, Sarah, please." When I opened the door with my spare key, I expected to see her rocking back and forth on the carpet. Instead, she was sitting calmly on her couch watching Vampire Diaries. "I had to make sure you still choose me when it mattered." I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, but she'd always been a little loopy, and we'd been best friends for 20 years. I kept telling myself she just needed time to adjust. Then came the day of my wedding. It started beautifully. Jenna gave this heartfelt maid of honor speech about true friendship lasting forever. She cried and made everyone else cry too. During the reception, she kept bringing Marcus drinks. "Another whiskey for the groom," she'd sing out with this huge smile. I noticed she always came from the direction of the bathroom, not the bar. But I was too busy greeting guests to think about it. I was talking to my grandmother when I noticed Marcus stumbling during our first dance. His words came out thick and slurred. "Sarah, I don't feel right," he mumbled. His face went gray, and sweat dripped down his temples. Suddenly, he hit the floor hard and started shaking. I screamed and dropped beside him. His eyes rolled back until I could only see white. Jenna appeared instantly and wrapped her arms around me. "I'm here, baby, I've got you," she whispered, while people shouted for 911. When the paramedics showed up, I almost had a heart attack, because that's when the bartender revealed that Jenna had insisted on pouring Marcus's drinks herself. Said she wanted to add something special for the toast. My whole body went cold. I turned to look at her and she was smiling, actually smiling. She then tilted her head like I asked something strange. "He was taking you away from me, Sarah. We've been together 20 years, and he thought a few years meant something." Her voice was so calm, it made my skin crawl. "Now it can be just us again, like it's supposed to be." Marcus was convulsing. Foam came out of his mouth. Jenna tried to pull me back into a hug. "Don't look at him. Look at me. I'm here. I'll always be here." When I tried to push her away, she held on tighter. The police had to drag her out while she screamed about true friendship and how I'd thank her someday. The doctors pumped Marcus's stomach and found antifreeze. He lived, but his kidneys are shot. Dialysis 3 times a week for the rest of his life. And Jenna was arrested and thrown into jail. But what I didn't anticipate was the jails being overcrowded and her being let out on good behavior after just 2 weeks in a cell. Because for the entirety of her stay, there was just one thing on her mind: winning me back. I sat in the hospital waiting room 3 days later, watching the clock tick past midnight. Marcus was hooked up to machines in the dialysis unit, and I scrolled through my phone to pass the time. That's when I saw it. A mutual friend had posted on Facebook, "So glad you're home," with a heart emoji on Jenna's wall. My hand started shaking as I took a screenshot. The timestamp showed it was posted 2 hours ago. The next morning, I drove to the grocery store pharmacy to pick up Marcus's new medications. The pharmacist handed me a bag full of bottles while explaining dosage schedules. I turned toward the shampoo aisle to grab some essentials when I froze. Jenna stood there, methodically picking up bottles and smelling each one. Our eyes locked across the aisle. An elderly woman between us complained loudly about the rising prices of everything. Jenna's lips moved silently, and I could read them clearly. "We need to talk." I spun around and rushed back to the pharmacy counter. The words tumbled out in a frantic stream as I told the pharmacist about being stalked, about the antifreeze, about the friendship bracelets we used to make in middle school. The pharmacist's expression shifted from concern to confusion as I rambled. Behind me, Jenna calmly approached the counter with her own prescription bag, waiting patiently for her turn. My phone buzzed as I practically ran to my car. A text from my mother lit up the screen. "Honey, can you bring Jenna to Sunday dinner? The poor girl has nowhere else to go, and prison was so traumatic for her." She reached out to me on Facebook, and my heart just breaks for her. I stared at the message in disbelief. My own mother, the woman who had watched Jenna nearly call my husband, was now inviting her to family dinner. The next day brought an impossible choice. Marcus had a crucial nephrology appointment at 2 p.m. to discuss his long-term treatment plan. But the courthouse clerk had called that morning. If I wanted an emergency restraining order against Jenna, I needed to appear before the judge at exactly the same time. My phone pinged with a text as I agonized over the decision. Unknown number, but I recognized the writing style immediately. "I'll drive Marcus if you're busy." You know, I've always been good with medical stuff from growing up around the hospital. I chose Marcus. Of course I chose Marcus. We sat through the appointment together while the nephrologist explained the reality of our new life. 3 times a week, 4 hours each session, for the rest of his life unless a kidney match appeared. When we returned home that evening, I found my neighbor, Mrs. Chen, waiting on our porch with 2 other neighbors. Mrs. Chen shifted uncomfortably before speaking. "Sarah, we're worried about you. Jenna came by earlier and explained everything. She's planning an intervention for your paranoid breakdown. She showed us texts where you've been accusing her of following you for months, even before the wedding. She just wants to help." The other neighbors nodded sympathetically. I recognized the look in their eyes. The same look people gave my mother when she had her breakdown after Dad died. They thought I was losing my mind. The hospital bills arrived the next morning in a thick envelope. $47,000 after insurance. The same mail delivery brought a letter from my lawyer requesting a $5,000 retainer to begin building our civil case against Jenna. My phone rang as I stared at the numbers. Marcus's boss explained apologetically that the extended medical leave meant changes to our insurance plan. We need to switch to COBRA coverage at triple the monthly cost. Desperate, I created a GoFundMe page that afternoon. "Help Marcus recover from poisoning attack," I titled it. Within 3 hours, we'd raised $3,000 from friends, family, and kind strangers. Then the page vanished. GoFundMe sent an automated email. "Your fundraiser has been reported as fraudulent and is under review. All funds have been frozen pending investigation." I clicked through to see who had donated before the freeze. My blood ran cold. Half the names matched Jenna's extended family. Cousins, aunts, uncles I'd met at barbecues over the years. They donated just to report it as a scam. 2 days later, I dropped Marcus off at the dialysis center for his Thursday session. I just parked at home when my phone rang. The dialysis nurse sounded puzzled. "Mrs. Patterson, your friend is here with flowers for your husband. She's quite upset, crying about making amends for a terrible mistake. Should I let her in to see him?" I drove back so fast I'm surprised I didn't get pulled over. By the time I arrived, Jenna was in the waiting room, surrounded by sympathetic nurses. Mascara ran down her cheeks as she clutched a bouquet of yellow roses, Marcus's favorite. She looked up when I burst through the doors, her tear-filled eyes meeting mine with perfect timing. "I just wanted to apologize," she sobbed to the room at large. "I made one terrible mistake, and now Sarah won't even let me make things right." That evening, Marcus's 16-year-old niece Emma posted on Instagram. The caption under a throwback photo of her, Marcus, Jenna, and me at last year's 4th of July barbecue read, "She made one mistake, and now Sarah is destroying her life. Uncle Marcus is sick, but Jenna's whole future is ruined. Where's the forgiveness?" The post had 47 likes and dozens of comments supporting Jenna within an hour. The security footage from the wedding venue finally arrived by email the next week. My lawyer had fought hard to get it released. I opened the file with trembling fingers, fast-forwarding to the timestamp I'd memorized, 8:47 p.m., when Jenna had gone to the bathroom with Marcus's drink. The camera angle showed her entering the bathroom, then nothing. For 90 seconds, she was inside with no visibility. She emerged carrying the same glass, but the camera position made it impossible to see if she'd added anything. Those 90 seconds of uncertainty might as well have been 90 years. The local news station called that afternoon. They wanted to interview me about the shocking wedding incident. I agreed immediately, thinking finally someone would tell our story properly. The reporter seemed sympathetic during our hour-long conversation, but when the segment aired that night, they'd edited it down to 3 minutes, focused on the friendship gone wrong angle. They showed photos of Jenna and me from high school, prom, college graduation. The reporter's voiceover wondered, how did a 20-year friendship end in such tragedy? They made us both look equally unstable, equally at fault. My boss pulled me aside the next morning. "Sarah, I need a character reference for your promotion review. Someone who's known you for at least 15 years in a non-family capacity." My heart sank. In our small town, with our intertwined history, only one person qualified, Jenna. My sister called during my lunch break. "Sarah, I'm worried about you. This whole situation with Jenna. It reminds me of Mom after Dad died. She started seeing threats everywhere, too. She pushed away her best friend, Linda, because she was convinced Linda was trying to steal her recipes, or something crazy. Oh wow, Jenna is playing such a twisted game right now. She's texting Sarah, offering to drive Marcus to his appointment, while Sarah has to choose between protecting him and getting a restraining order. Crazy. Remember? You're acting just like she did." I wanted to scream that this was different. Jenna had actually poisoned my husband, but the comparison to our mother's breakdown had already taken root in my sister's mind. That evening, I discovered Jenna had created a private Facebook group called Supporting Sarah Through Crisis. She'd invited mutual friends and posted old photos with detailed captions. One showed us at 16, arms around each other at the beach. Her caption read, "Even then, Sarah would get jealous when I dated anyone. She said I was abandoning her for my boyfriend. I should have seen the pattern." The group had 83 members. People I'd known my whole life were commenting with their own concerns about my behavior over the years. 3 school moms reported me to the principal the following week. They claimed I'd been following Jenna around town, showing up wherever she went. The truth? We'd been shopping at the same stores on the same days for years. The grocery store on Tuesdays, Target on Thursdays, the farmer's market on Saturdays. But now my routine looked like stalking. I discovered Jenna's latest manipulation by accident. While searching for reviews of a new Netflix series, I found a user named Best Friend Since 1999 who'd watched exactly the same shows as me, in the same order, posting reviews that echoed my opinions with eerie precision. The account was created the day she got out of jail. The exhaustion hit me hard by week 3. I'd been checking locks obsessively, installing new security cameras, barely sleeping. One morning I dozed off at a red light. The honking horns jolted me awake. Other drivers were already on their phones, and 20 minutes later, 2 police officers showed up at our door, responding to reports of an impaired driver matching my description and license plate. Marcus's brother Rob had initially offered to help with legal fees, but that changed after a family dinner where his wife pulled him aside. Later, Rob called me with an apologetic tone. "I googled it, Sarah. Attempted murder is really hard to prove, and we have kids to think about. I can't risk our savings on a case that might go nowhere. I'm sorry. The neighborhood had shifted too. When I walked our dog Bailey, neighbors who used to wave now rushed inside. I found out why when Emma showed me the neighborhood watch Facebook page. They were discussing my erratic behavior, the late night lock checking, the security cameras, the incident at the red light. Jenna was listed as the group's moderator. She'd been made a moderator because she'd expressed concern for the neighborhood's safety during Sarah's difficult time. During Marcus's next dialysis session, I sat with him as the machine cleaned his blood. The nurse Jennifer, who'd been treating him since the beginning, mentioned something that made my blood run cold. Your friend came by last week when you weren't here, she told Marcus. She was asking such detailed questions about your treatment schedule and the specific medications. Said she wanted to understand so she could support you both better. Such a caring person. My hands clenched into fists. Jenna was gathering information, planning something. But what could I do? Who would believe me? Everyone already thought I was paranoid, unstable, just like my mother. The financial pressure mounted daily. The mortgage payment was due, but our savings had been drained by medical bills and legal fees. Credit cards maxed out. Marcus couldn't work, and my job was hanging by a thread after too many missed days for medical appointments and court hearings. I stared at the pile of bills on our kitchen table, wondering how everything had spiraled so completely out of control. 20 years of friendship, one moment of madness, and now Jenna was free while we were trapped in a prison of medical debt and failing kidneys. My phone buzzed with another text from an unknown number. I'm still here for you, Sarah, whenever you're ready to talk. Best friends forever, remember? I knew I had to find a way to fight back, but how do you battle someone who knows every weakness, every fear, every secret you've shared over 2 decades? Someone who's convinced half the town that you're the crazy one? The war between us had only just begun, and I was already losing ground. I watched from my kitchen window as Jenna moved into the house across the street. Tom, my single dad neighbor who'd helped me with the yard work after Marcus got sick, carried boxes while Jenna directed him with gentle touches on his arm. She'd been dating him for 2 weeks now, bringing him fresh-baked cookies every evening. The smell of chocolate chip cookies wafted through the neighborhood, and I recognized the recipe immediately. My mother's secret ingredient was vanilla pudding mix. I'd taught Jenna that recipe in high school when we baked for the school fundraiser. Tom waved at me through the window. I forced myself to wave back, watching Jenna lean into him and whisper something that made him glance at my house with concern. She was already planting seeds, turning another ally against me. My phone vibrated with a notification from the private investigator I'd hired to document Jenna's activities. He'd sent photos from the bachelorette party 6 months ago, hoping to find evidence of her threats. I scrolled through blurry images of us at the karaoke bar, searching for the moment I remembered so clearly. There it was, Jenna holding the microphone, mouth open mid-song. The caption on his email made my stomach drop. 3 bridesmaids had provided statements. They all remembered the same thing. Jenna singing about culling for concert tickets, not threatening Marcus. My sister arrived unannounced that afternoon, carrying a folder of old text messages she'd printed out. She spread them across my dining table like evidence in a courtroom. Messages from 2 years ago filled the pages. My own words stared back at me. Complaints about Marcus working late, frustrations about wedding planning, moments of doubt every bride probably experienced. But taken out of context, arranged in this careful order, they painted a picture of an unhappy woman trapped in a relationship. The worst message made my hands shake. During a particularly bad fight about wedding costs, I texted Jenna on, Marcus is suffocating me. Sometimes I wish I could just run away and start over somewhere new. Below it, another message. Maybe we should have stayed in our apartment forever, just the 2 of us like old times. My sister's expression mixed pity with concern as she gathered the papers. She mentioned that Jenna had shared these with a few close friends, worried about my mental state even before the wedding. The narrative was shifting, twisting, until I barely recognized my own life. Emma's therapy appointment created another crisis. Marcus's brother called me, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. The family therapist had asked Emma about our family dynamics, and she'd innocently repeated something she'd overheard at a barbecue. Apparently, I'd made a joke about slipping something into Marcus's drink when he was being stubborn about wedding centerpieces. Adult sarcasm filtered through a child's memory became something sinister. I tried explaining context, but Marcus's brother cut me off. His ex-wife was already using this information to push for supervised visits only. The custody battle he'd worked so hard to win was now in jeopardy because of my documented history of joking about poisoning. That evening, I discovered Jenna had installed a Ring doorbell camera at Tom's house, directly facing our front door. The angle captured everyone who visited us. I noticed it when the infrared light glowed in the darkness. My own security cameras, installed for protection, now looked like mutual surveillance. The neighbors probably thought we were both unstable, watching each other like this. I couldn't sleep that night. Around 2 a.m., I crept to the window and peered through the blinds at Tom's house. Jenna's car was in the driveway, and I could see her silhouette moving past the lit windows. She was awake too, probably planning her next move. I stayed there for an hour, documenting her movements in a notebook, before realizing how this would look if anyone saw me. The next morning brought a call from family court. Jenna had volunteered to tutor Emma in math, offering her services free of charge. Marcus's brother was considering it because Emma was struggling, and private tutors cost $60 an hour. When I protested, the court mediator gently reminded me that Jenna had no criminal record. The charges were still pending, and she'd been Emma's honorary aunt for years. My attempts to block it looked vindictive and petty. I spent hours searching through old photos on social media, looking for evidence of Jenna's obsession. Instead, I found something that made my blood run cold. A shared Pinterest board she'd created with Marcus 3 months before our wedding. The board was titled Supporting Your Wife's Friendships, and filled with articles about toxic masculinity, possessive husbands, and maintaining female friendships after marriage. The last pin had been added the morning of our wedding. 10 signs. Your partner is isolating you from friends. Jenna's manipulation went deeper than I'd realized. She'd been preparing Marcus to see himself as the problem, making him doubt his own instincts about her behavior. No wonder he'd stayed quiet when he found the AirTag in my purse. She'd convinced him that any concerns were just his own possessiveness. My Instagram feed became a battlefield. Jenna posted stories throughout the day, always at locations I frequented. The coffee shop where I bought Marcus's favorite blend, the park where I walked Bailey, the craft store where I bought supplies for thank you cards. Each post was timestamped 20 to 30 minutes before I arrived. To anyone watching, it looked like I was following her around town. I tried changing my routine, but she anticipated every move. When I switched coffee shops, she was already there. When I walked Bailey at dawn instead of dusk, she jogged past with Tom. The psychological warfare was exhausting me, wearing down my defenses bit by bit. The breaking point came when I attempted to record our interaction at the coffee shop. I positioned my phone carefully on the table, hoping to capture her threats or admissions, but Jen spotted it immediately. She stood up, her voice carrying across the crowded cafe as she announced she didn't consent to being recorded during her healing journey. The barista, a young woman who knew us both, asked me to leave. The humiliation burned as I gathered my things under the judgmental stares of other customers. Marcus's dialysis schedule created impossible choices. His Thursday session conflicted with Emma's school play, where she had the lead role. Normally, I would have missed the play without question, but Jenna had volunteered to take Emma, and Marcus's family was watching to see what I'd choose. If I went to dialysis, I'd seem like a controlling wife who wouldn't let Jenna near the family. If I went to the play, I'd leave Marcus vulnerable during treatment. I chose Marcus, but the damage was done. Photos from the play flooded Facebook, showing Jenna sitting in the front row with Marcus's family, holding flowers for Emma. She looked like the devoted aunt, while I looked like the paranoid wife who couldn't put aside her grudges for a child's special moment. My coworker Diane became the next casualty. She'd witnessed Jenna's increasingly frequent visits to our office over the past year, but when I asked her to provide a statement, she refused. Her promotion had just been approved, and she couldn't risk being associated with an attempted murder case. She avoided eye contact as she explained that her career came first. The Pinterested board discovery? Jenna actually spent months before the wedding planting seeds in Marcus's mind about being a controlling husband who is this girl WTF. I understood, but it still felt like betrayal. The mimicry escalated to disturbing levels. I noticed it first when Jenna walked past the dialysis center. Her hair, previously brown with subtle highlights, was now dyed to match my exact shade of auburn. She wore the same perfume I'd worn since college, a discontinued scent I had to order online. Her clothes mirrored my style. The same brands, the same color palettes, even the same jewelry designs. At the grocery store, I watched her load her cart with identical items to mine. The same organic yogurt, the same gluten-free bread Marcus needed for his renal diet, the same laundry detergent. She was becoming me, erasing the boundaries between us until nobody could tell where she ended and I began. Jenna's lawyer sent a proposal that made my skin crawl. She offered to drop all civil suits if I agreed to a closure ceremony at her apartment. The letter described it as a healing ritual to properly say goodbye to our friendship, complete with burning old photos and sharing final words. The subtext was clear. She wanted me alone in her space, vulnerable and without witnesses. When I refused, she posted on every social media platform about my cruelty. Her words were carefully crafted to sound reasonable. I've apologized, I've offered to make amends, I've tried to give us both closure, but Sarah won't even let me say goodbye properly. Who's really being unforgiving here? The comments poured in supporting her. Old classmates, distant relatives, people who'd attended our joint birthday parties over the years. They all thought I was being unnecessarily harsh, unable to forgive a moment of madness from someone who'd loved me for 2 decades. My investigation into the security footage revealed a devastating mistake. I'd been so focused on the West Wing bathroom, where I thought Jenna had gone, that I'd missed the truth. The enhanced footage showed her visiting multiple bathrooms throughout the reception, carrying drinks each time. She'd been in the East Wing bathroom with Marcus's drink, but I'd wasted precious time and credibility insisting on the wrong location. The discovery shattered my confidence. If I'd been wrong about something so basic, what else had I misunderstood? My lawyer warned that this error would be used to discredit all my testimony. Jenna's defense team was already spinning it as evidence of my paranoid delusions. Marcus's journal surfaced during the discovery. He'd been documenting his concerns about Jenna for months before the wedding, but he'd never sent the emails he drafted. Page after page detailed her possessive behavior, her manipulation tactics, her increasing instability, but he'd kept it all secret, afraid of destroying my oldest friendship. His silence had enabled her escalation, and now we were both paying the price. The financial strain finally broke us. With credit cards maxed out and legal fees mounting, I had to make an impossible choice. Marcus needed a specialized medication not covered by our insurance, $400 a month to prevent infections during dialysis, but paying for it meant missing the mortgage payment. I chose the medication, knowing we were starting down a path that would end in foreclosure. Jenna must have sensed our desperation, because her next move targeted our last source of support. She started dating Tom more seriously, integrating herself into the neighborhood social structure. Soon, she was hosting book clubs and organizing block parties from Tom's house. The same neighbors who'd once brought us casseroles now gathered in her living room, discussing my concerning behavior over wine and cheese. My brother faced his own impossible choice when his ex-wife threatened to revisit their custody arrangement. She'd heard about the family drama and worried about the children's safety during his visitation weekends. He called me one evening, his voice heavy with regret. He believed me, he said, but his kids came first. He couldn't risk losing them by being associated with our situation. The call ended with him promising to help when things calmed down, but we both knew that was a lie. I started adopting Jenna's tactics out of desperation. I created fake social media accounts to monitor her supporters, gathering information about their plans and conversations. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was becoming the stalker she'd painted me as, but I needed to know what she was planning, needed to stay one step ahead. The grocery store became a battlefield. I encountered Jenna's mother while waiting for Marcus's prescriptions. She was on the phone, speaking loudly enough for me to hear. Her daughter was struggling, she said, traumatized by prison and my vengeful campaign against her. I pretended to study vitamins while memorizing every word, hoping for some admission of guilt or planned revelation. Marcus's medical records provided a glimmer of hope. His kidney function had been perfect just 2 months before the wedding, contradicting Jenna's claim that he had pre-existing conditions that made him susceptible to antifreeze. But even this victory fell hollow when his ex-girlfriend Beth emerged from the past. Beth contacted Jenna's lawyer, offering to testify about my codependent friendship and how it had affected her relationship with Marcus. She painted a picture of a woman who couldn't let go, who sabotaged Marcus's romantic relationships to keep her best friend close. The narrative was building. I was the possessive one, not Jenna. The infection hit Marcus hard and fast. I was meeting with our lawyer when the call came. He'd spiked a fever during dialysis and was being rushed to the emergency room. By the time I arrived, Jenna was already there. She sat in the waiting room with fresh flowers and a concerned expression, playing the role of supportive friend perfectly. The nurses thought it was touching how she'd rushed over to help. The next blow came from my employer. Our biggest client had complained about the drama I'd brought to professional meetings. The client's daughter, I learned later, was Jenna's cousin. My boss had no choice. They needed that account more than they needed me. I was given 2 weeks severance and a neutral reference as long as I didn't make waves. Without income and with mounting bills, I had to move in with my brother temporarily. But even that refuge was tainted. I slept in the guest room while Jenna hosted healing circles at the wedding venue where Marcus and I had exchanged vows. She'd rented the space for group therapy sessions, turning our sacred place into her stage for recovery. My mother's plea came during one of our lowest moments. She sat across from me at my brother's kitchen table, tears streaming down her face. She begged me to let it go, to stop pursuing justice. We'd already lost so much. Marcus's health, our home, our savings. She couldn't bear to watch Jenna take everything else, but I couldn't stop. Not when I was so close to proving the truth. My investigation into Jenna's past revealed a pattern of escalating behavior that others had ignored or excused. Her high school teacher, Mrs. Patterson, had noticed concerning signs but never reported them. When the authorities questioned her about her failure to act, her comfortable retirement crumbled. Mrs. Patterson's husband left her after 30 years of marriage. He couldn't watch her career and reputation destroyed over something from decades ago. The guilt of continuing my investigation while knowing the collateral damage ate at me, but I pushed forward. Even after learning that Mrs. Patterson had attempted sewer slide after losing her pension, I kept pursuing leads. Justice for Marcus had to come first. The cracks in our united front began to show. During a moment of weakness, Marcus asked the question I'd been dreading. What if Jenna had only meant to make him sick? What if she'd miscalculated the dose, never intending to cause permanent damage? The doubt in his voice shattered something inside me. Even he was starting to question whether her actions warranted the destruction of so many lives. My credibility took another hit when I admitted to helping Jenna slash her ex-boyfriend's tires in college. And it seemed like harmless revenge at the time. He'd cheated on her with her roommate, but now it painted me as someone familiar with criminal behavior. Someone who might exaggerate or lie to get revenge on a former friend. The enhanced hospital footage delivered another blow. It showed Jenna in her car after the poisoning, sobbing uncontrollably. Her body shook with what looked like genuine remorse or panic. The prosecution warned that this could be interpreted as someone who'd made a terrible mistake in a moment of passion, not a calculated killer. Jenna's legal team moved to expedite the proceedings, claiming my harassment campaign was causing severe PTSD. The judge agreed to move the date up by 3 months, giving us less time to prepare. The pressure was mounting from all sides. Her journals, subpoenaed during discovery, revealed the depth of her delusion. Page after page detailed her belief that she deserved to be my family after 20 years of devotion. In her mind, Marcus had stolen something that rightfully belonged to her. She saw herself as saving me from a bad marriage, protecting me from someone who would inevitably hurt me. The twisted logic made a horrible kind of sense. She'd been there through every breakup, every disappointment, every moment of pain in my life. In her fractured mind, she'd earned the right to be my primary relationship. Marcus was an interloper who'd swooped in after just a few years and claimed the place she'd occupied for 2 decades. Realizing I had to expose every vulnerable moment from our friendship felt like another betrayal. To win, I'd have to reveal the secrets we'd shared, the moments of weakness she'd witnessed, the trust she'd violated. Even in pursuing justice, I was destroying the sacred bond we'd once shared. The old version of me, the one who valued loyalty above all else, would have been horrified by my actions. But she died the night Marcus collapsed at our wedding. In her place stood someone harder, more strategic, someone who documented everything and trusted no one. Jenna had culled that innocent version of me as surely as she destroyed Marcus's kidneys. My manipulation of Emma proved how far I'd fallen. I pretended to want reconciliation with Jenna, knowing Emma would relay the information. When Jenna changed her routines based on false information Emma innocently shared, I felt a sick satisfaction. I was using a child to fight my battle, becoming someone I didn't recognize. The wedding dress fitting video arrived among the discovery documents. Security footage from the bridal shop showed Jenna watching me try on dresses, tears streaming down her face. She whispered something the audio barely caught. She looks perfect. She's perfect. Why isn't I enough? The raw pain in her voice made my victory feel hollow. I was destroying someone who genuinely loved me, even if that love had twisted into something monstrous. Jenna's counterclaim included 147 pages of text messages spanning our entire friendship. They showed my emotional dependence on her, the times I'd chosen her over boyfriends, the promises we'd made about being in each other's lives forever. Taken together, they painted me as the codependent one who suddenly abandoned our friendship for a man. Everything came down to Marcus's testimony, but his health was failing, and the medications made him confused. Some days he couldn't remember the wedding clearly. Other days he mixed up the timeline of events. Jenna's lawyers would tear him apart apart on the stand, using his confusion to discredit our entire case. The kindness I'd shown Jenna's nephew years ago became another weapon against me. Now, the way Jenna used her own cousin to get the OP fired from her job is just pure evil genius. She's literally controlling every single part of this poor woman's life. He testified that I taught him it was sometimes necessary to lie to protect people you love. I'd been comforting him about keeping his mom's surprise birthday party secret, but his child's interpretation made it sound like I endorsed deception as a way of life. The hospital staff began choosing sides based on practical considerations. Those who needed access to certain insurance networks through workplace connections sided with whoever could maintain those relationships. The same people who'd cared for Marcus were now calculating which side would benefit them more. The prosecutor explained the harsh reality of our case. Proving Jenna bought antifreeze wasn't enough. We needed concrete evidence of intent to call, not just harm. The fact that she'd researched dosages could be spun as trying to avoid lethal amounts. Her lawyer was already crafting a narrative of a desperate woman who made a terrible miscalculation while trying to save her best friend from an unhappy marriage. I called in my last favor with a journalist who'd covered our charity work years ago. She agreed to write about the case, but warned she'd tell the story objectively. The resulting article was sympathetic, but included details about both our mental health struggles. Instead of vindicating me, it partially undermined my credibility by highlighting my family's history of breakdowns. The investigation revealed Marcus had been documenting Jenna's behavior in secret email drafts for months. He'd noticed the stalking, the possessiveness, the escalating instability, but he'd never sent the emails, afraid of forcing me to choose between him and my oldest friend. His silence had enabled her delusions, and now we were all paying the price. The final piece of evidence came from an unexpected source. The wedding videographer had kept raw footage that showed Jenna adding something to Marcus's specific glass, but even this smoking GN had complications. The footage existed only because Marcus had hired a second videographer secretly, suggesting he'd anticipated something might happen. Why hadn't he warned me? Why had he let our wedding proceed knowing the danger? The revelation that Marcus had suspected Jenna and said nothing felt like another betrayal. He'd chosen to risk his safety rather than force me to confront the truth about my best friend. His noble intention had resulted in a lifetime of dialysis and the destruction of multiple lives. As I prepared for what came next, I made a conscious choice to proceed without vindication. When presenting evidence, I acknowledged our mutual failures. We'd all failed each other. Me through blindness, Marcus through silence, and Jenna through obsession. The admission felt like defeat, but it was the only honest path forward. The judge ordered comprehensive psychological evaluations for both Jenna and me. The system needed to understand how a 20-year friendship had devolved into attempted murder. As Jenna was remanded to court-ordered supervision, her face crumbled. For a moment, I saw the kindergarten girl who'd grabbed my hand and declared us best friends forever. The war between us was entering its final phase. Everything we'd built over 20 years lay in ruins. The question now was whether justice would emerge from the wreckage or if we'd all be buried beneath it. The answer would come soon enough, but the scars would last forever. I searched Marcus's old emails frantically, looking for any documentation he might have saved. My fingers trembled as I scrolled through folders from before our wedding. There, buried in drafts from 6 months ago, I found them. Email after email he'd written but never sent, documenting Jenna's escalating behavior. The subject lines alone made my stomach churn. Concerning behavior at dinner party, found tracker in Sarah's purse, what to do. Jenna's threats getting worse. Each unsent message detailed incidents I'd never known about. Jenna cornering him at my birthday party, warning him she'd been there first. Her showing up at his workplace with lunch, interrogating his coworkers about our relationship. The time she'd called him crying at 3 a.m., begging him to leave me before it was too late. He'd documented everything but kept it secret, trying to protect my oldest friendship. The timestamp on the final draft stopped my heart. 4:47 a.m. on our wedding day. He'd written about finding her in the venue kitchen at midnight during setup, handling the glassware. He'd suspected something but chose silence over destroying my happiness. His love for me had overridden his survival instinct. I printed every email, my hands shaking as the pages emerged. This evidence changed everything, but it also revealed Marcus's complicity through inaction. He'd known the danger and let our wedding proceed anyway. 3 days later, I sat across from the prosecutor as she reviewed the new evidence. Her expression shifted from skepticism to concern as she read Marcus's detailed observations. She made notes about subpoenaing his devices for additional documentation, but she also warned me that his failure to report Jenna's behavior could complicate our case. The defense would argue he didn't take the threats seriously enough to act on them. The wedding videographer called that afternoon with news that made my knees weak. While organizing footage for another project, he'd discovered additional angles from our reception. His assistant had been filming B-roll throughout the evening, capturing candid moments. He'd upload everything to a secure drive immediately. I watched the raw footage alone in my brother's guest room, frame by frame. There it was at timestamp 8:52 p.m. Jenna at the bar, her back to the main camera, but visible in profile to the B-roll angle. She pulled something from her purse, glanced around, then poured clear liquid into a specific glass. The amber whiskey turned slightly cloudy before settling. She carried that exact glass directly to Marcus. My phone rang as I saved the file. The caller ID showed blocked, but I recognized the breathing pattern immediately. Jenna always had this specific way of inhaling before speaking when she was nervous. I hung up without listening to whatever she'd planned to say. The pharmacy records arrived via court order the next morning, July 15th, 3 days before our wedding. Jenna had purchased antifreeze at 11:47 p.m. paying cash. The receipt showed she'd also bought air fresheners and candy, clearly trying to make the antifreeze purchase seem incidental. But July in our town meant temperatures in the 90s. Nobody winterized vehicles in July. I drove to the pharmacy myself, needing to see the security footage they'd pulled. The grainy black and white video showed Jenna at the automotive aisle, reading labels carefully. She'd picked up 3 different bottles before selecting the antifreeze. The pharmacist remembered the transaction because she'd made small talk about her mom's old car, needing maintenance. All lies. Tom knocked on my brother's door that evening, his face drawn with worry. He had discovered something in Jenna's things while she was at her therapy appointment. A notebook filled with what looked like practice conversations, different scenarios of how to explain Marcus's illness. One page had a list titled Natural Causes that Mimic Poisoning Symptoms. Another contained wedding venue layouts with bathroom locations circled. He handed me the notebook with shaking hands, explaining he couldn't stay with someone capable of such planning. But he also warned me that Jenna had been asking detailed questions about my brother's work schedule and the house layout. She knew which room I was staying in. The next morning brought a development I hadn't expected. Jenna's mother called the prosecutor's office sobbing. She'd found additional evidence while cleaning out Jenna's old room. Hidden in a jewelry box were printed articles about antifreeze poisoning, dating back 2 months before the wedding. She'd also discovered a practice letter in Jenna's handwriting. "I'm so sorry about Marcus. Who could have known he had kidney problems?" Her mother's voice broke as she admitted she'd suspected something was wrong, but ignored the signs. The guilt of enabling her daughter's obsession through silence was destroying her. She agreed to testify about finding the evidence, knowing it would likely mean significant prison time for Jenna. I met with Marcus at the dialysis center to discuss the mounting evidence. He looked exhausted, the treatment taking more out of him each week. As the machine cleaned his blood, he finally admitted the full truth. He'd installed the tracking app on my phone after finding Jenna's AirTag, wanting to monitor if she was following me. The data showed she'd been at every location I visited for months, always arriving first to create the appearance that I was stalking her. He'd documented everything in a hidden folder, planning to confront her after our honeymoon, but he'd wanted to give me one perfect day first. One day where my oldest friendship didn't cast shadows over our happiness. That decision had cost him his kidneys. The trial date approached faster than expected. Jenna's lawyer had pushed for an expedited schedule, claiming that prolonged proceedings were damaging his client's mental health. The judge agreed, setting jury selection for the following Monday. I spent the weekend organizing evidence with our legal team. Boxes of documents, USB drives of footage, printed text messages spanning 20 years. The sheer volume of proof felt overwhelming, but the prosecutor reminded me that quantity didn't guarantee conviction. We needed the jury to understand the pattern of escalation, the calculated nature of Jenna's actions. Sunday night, I couldn't sleep. I stood at my brother's kitchen window, staring at the darkness outside. Somewhere in town, Jenna was probably awake too, preparing her own version of events. The girl who'd held my hand in kindergarten had become someone unrecognizable, but traces of our shared history lingered in every piece of evidence. Monday morning arrived with unexpected rain. I dressed carefully in the outfit the prosecutor had approved. Professional but not severe, sympathetic but not weak. Marcus waited in the car, his dialysis schedule adjusted to accommodate the trial. We drove to the courthouse in silence, both lost in thoughts of how different our lives should have been. The courthouse steps were slick with rain as we climbed them. Inside, the hallway buzzed with the energy of a Monday morning docket. I saw familiar faces from our community, some avoiding eye contact, others offering small nods of support. The town had chosen sides, and those divisions would last long after the verdict. Jury selection took 3 days. The prosecutor carefully questioned potential jurors about their views on friendship, loyalty, and betrayal. Several admitted they couldn't be impartial after following the story on social media. Others revealed connections to either Jenna's or my family. By Wednesday afternoon, 12 jurors and 2 alternates had been seated. Thursday morning, opening statements began. The prosecutor laid out the state's case methodically: premeditation, purchase of poison, calculated execution, permanent disability inflicted on the victim. She painted a picture of obsession spiraling into attempted murder, using Jenna's own words from texts and journals. The defense attorney countered with a narrative of mental illness and momentary breakdown. He emphasized Jenna's clean record, her community service, her 20-year devotion to friendship. He suggested the antifreeze was meant to cause mild illness, not permanent damage. A cry for attention gone tragically wrong. I testified on the second day of trial. The prosecutor walked me through the timeline carefully, letting the evidence tell the story. Yes, finally we're getting to the trial, and Marcus is telling her everything. He had a tracking app showing Jenna was following her everywhere, and arriving first to make it look like stalking. And Jenna's own mom is testifying against her after finding those practice letters about Marcus having kidney problems before she even poisoned him. I kept my voice steady as I described finding Marcus on our wedding dance floor, foam on his mouth. The defense attorney's cross-examination focused on my mother's mental health history and my own admitted paranoia. He suggested I'd misinterpreted innocent actions through a lens of genetic predisposition to breakdown. Marcus testified the following Monday, his weakness evident as he took the stand. He needed breaks every 30 minutes for medication and water. His testimony about the poisoning's aftermath, the daily dialysis, the infections, the stolen future, brought several jurors to tears, but the defense attorney seized on his admission that he'd suspected Jenna and said nothing, suggesting complicity or exaggeration. The videographer presented the enhanced footage on Tuesday. The courtroom fell silent as Jenna's actions played on the large screen. Pour, swirl, carry, deliver. The defense tried to argue the liquid could have been anything: flavor enhancer, alcohol, even water. But the timeline matched too perfectly with Marcus's collapse. Tom testified reluctantly on Wednesday, clearly struggling with divided loyalties. He confirmed finding the notebook, Jenna's questions about antifreeze, her obsessive behavior. Under cross-examination, he admitted to initially thinking her devotion was touching, not dangerous. His testimony painted a picture of how easily Jenna had fooled everyone around her. The forensic evidence came Thursday. The prosecutor presented the pharmacy records, the July purchase date circled in red. The defense couldn't explain why someone would buy antifreeze in summer for a car that records showed hadn't needed any maintenance. The receipt became a damning piece of physical evidence. Jenna's mother took the stand Friday morning, tears streaming throughout her testimony. She described finding the hidden articles, the practice letter, the signs she'd ignored. Her guilt was palpable as she admitted enabling her daughter's obsession by dismissing concerns as girl drama. The defense didn't cross-examine, knowing the emotional impact couldn't be undone. The journal evidence was presented the following week. Page after page of Jenna's writings revealed the depth of her delusion. She'd convinced herself that Marcus was temporary, that I'd eventually return to her. The wedding was supposed to be a phase, not a permanent change. When reality didn't match her fantasy, she decided to reset the game board. Expert witnesses testified about antifreeze poisoning, kidney damage, and the long-term effects of ethylene glycol. The medical testimony was dry but crucial, establishing that the amount ingested could only have been intentional. No accidental sip could cause such extensive damage. The defense presented their case over 3 days. Character witnesses described Jenna's kindness, her volunteer work, her dedication to friends. Her therapist testified about her abandonment issues and emotional dysregulation. They painted her as a victim of her own broken mind, deserving treatment rather than punishment. Jenna herself took the stand on the final day of defense testimony. She sobbed through her account, claiming she'd only wanted to delay the wedding, to give me time to reconsider. She swore she'd researched doses carefully, never intending permanent harm, but under cross-examination, her story crumbled. She couldn't explain the practice letter or why she'd made multiple bathroom trips with different drinks. Closing arguments brought everything full circle. The prosecutor reminded jurors of the premeditation, the calculated execution, the devastating consequences. She asked them to hold Jenna accountable for choices made with clear intent. The defense made one final plea for mercy, emphasizing mental illness and a moment of desperate action. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Marcus and I waited in a small room, watching the clock and trying not to speculate. Every time the bailiff appeared, my heart raced. False alarm after false alarm until finally, late Thursday afternoon, word came. They'd reached a verdict. The courtroom was packed as we filed in. Jenna sat at the defense table, her hair now dyed black, wearing a conservative suit that made her look younger. Our eyes met briefly before she looked away. 20 years of friendship reduced to this moment. The judge called for the verdict. The foreman stood, paper trembling in his hands. Guilty of attempted murder in the first degree. Guilty of assault with a deadly weapon. Guilty of poisoning. The words hit like physical blows. Jenna collapsed into her chair, sobbing. Her mother wailed from the gallery. Sentencing was set for 6 weeks later. The judge ordered Jenna held without bail, considering her a flight risk given her obsessive behavior. As court officers led her away, she turned back one last time. Her lips moved in what might have been, "I'm sorry," or might have been, "I love you." I'll never know which. The aftermath was swift. The community that had been divided slowly began to heal. Those scars remained. Some friendships couldn't be salvaged. Others strengthened through shared truth. The wedding venue offered us a free anniversary celebration, but we declined. Some places hold too much pain to revisit. Marcus's health stabilized, but would never fully recover. Dialysis became our new normal. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 4 hours each time. We structured our lives around medical schedules and medication timers. The future we'd planned morphed into something smaller, but still meaningful. At sentencing, I gave a victim impact statement. I asked for Jenna to receive psychiatric treatment, along with incarceration. Prison alone wouldn't fix what was broken in her mind. The judge agreed, sentencing her to 15 years with mandatory mental health treatment. The restraining order would extend another 15 years beyond her release. We sold what remained of our possessions to cover legal debt. The house was already gone to foreclosure. We moved into a small apartment near the dialysis center, starting over with almost nothing, but we had each other and the truth. That had to be enough. 2 years later, I received a letter from Jenna's treatment facility. The doctor wrote that she was making progress but still fixated on our friendship. She asked about me daily, created art projects featuring our childhood memories, wrote letters she wasn't allowed to send. The obsession had roots too deep to fully extract. I burned the letter at the beach where Jenna and I had built sandcastles as children. Marcus stood beside me, his good arm around my shoulders as the paper turned to ash. The waves carried the remnants away, just as time had carried away the girls we'd once been. Our life was smaller now, but honest, built on truth instead of promises that couldn't be kept. The war was over. We'd survived. Marcus standing there with his arm around her, while the waves took the ashes away, was such a beautiful moment. They really did survive this nightmare together. Subscribe for more. I love you all. See you in the video.